Hello everybody, welcome to Also Rusty Bucket. Subscribe to the channel if you have not already. I am trying to hit 100k on this channel by the end of the year, so it'd be much appreciated. Also drop a like on this video, it only takes 1 second and it makes a massive difference. And also, seriously though, if you're watching these videos over from my main channel and you're not subscribed, you might as well just subscribe to make sure you see every upload. Anyways, game 1 of Suns versus Clippers, the first conference finals matchup just went down. The game later today will determine what the next conference finals matchup is. But we have Suns versus Clippers, which this first game was just awesome, to say the least. This is a weird series going into it just because of the injury factor. No Kawhi for the Clippers, no Chris Paul for the Suns. Not because of injury, but because of illness. So it's already a weird footing to start the series on because, at the very least, the Clippers definitely don't have their best player, and the Suns, it's a little bit of a debate still between Chris and Book, but definitely after this game, most people, including myself, are leaning towards Booker at this point, because Devin Booker had apparently the best, or his only triple-double game, which shocked me that that was the case. Not necessarily because Booker seems like the type of player who just gets a bunch of triple-doubles, but he's not a bad rebounder. He probably averages 5 a game, I would guess. And he's not a bad playmaker, probably in the same ballpark. I know he had a season where he averaged 6, nearly 7 assists. So he's definitely had multiple double-digit assist games. I'm assuming he's had a couple double-digit rebound games. But this is the first time he had both of them at the same time, along with 40 points. So starts this series off with a 40-point triple-double on really good efficiency, so just an amazing game from Booker. Another guy you have to mention is DeAndre Ayton. One of the most interesting factors for this series individually is the Clippers small ball, because we saw round 1 when they went to that small ball versus the Dallas Mavericks, there was not much the Mavericks could do. They were going towards Boban, which I think points to the desperation that the Clippers small ball was putting the Mavericks in. Oh, excuse me. So because the small ball was clearly effective versus them, and then it was also effective versus the Jazz, which pulled Rudy Gobert out of the paint, or at least attempted to. Really, it didn't, and that's why Terrence Mann feasted so much in Game 6. But the small ball worked in the first 2 rounds. It's more fuzzy in this round whether or not it will actually work, because DeAndre Ayton is a much better finisher inside the paint than both Boban and Rudy Gobert. And Rudy's not going to post up or just actively look for a shot in the paint like DeAndre Ayton will if he's asked to, and he has been asked to in this game and in the first round versus the Lakers especially. So yeah, that's a good thing for Ayton. As a result, we got a bit more Zubac minutes as well as DeMarcus Cousins minutes than maybe the Clippers would ideally go to. Zubac got 18 minutes, Cousins got 13, and Cousins played well offensively, but also got a shit ton of fouls, so I don't know how to actually view this performance. It's kind of weird. He did get a poster dunk on, who did he poster? I can't remember now. I think it was Cam Johnson. I can't remember now. Anyways, so he played pretty well in those minutes. Credit to him, but at the same time, they really don't want to be running centers. Their small ball was clearly the most effective thing, but it wasn't very viable against DeAndre Ayton. That's not to say that they didn't primarily still go to that, but it's definitely an interesting mix, because once they put Zubac on the floor, that's when Devin Booker started to cook, because they targeted him just like Luka Doncic did to him, where they were putting him in the pick and roll and trying to make him step up on Booker mid-range shots. And guess what? He didn't do that. Just like that Chris Paul Game 3 and kind of part of Game 4 versus the Denver Nuggets, it really felt like Chris Paul had to hit 15 mid-range shots in a row, especially in the third, fourth quarter area. And that felt like the same thing in this game from Devin Booker. It is legitimately like he hit 6 mid-range shots in the third quarter, or late third, early fourth, something like that. He was just making every mid-range pull-up he took. Even hit a couple of, at least one pull-up 3 that I can remember. I don't know if he hit another one. Of course, my dog is going to start barking in the background. That's lovely. So Booker just amazing in this game, and Zubac got targeted as soon as he was on the floor. As soon as he was on the floor, but at the same time, you can target Marcus Morris or Nick Batum at center if you have them guarding DeAndre Ayton. So it's an interesting balance to try and strike. The Suns thus far are definitely the team that has the best ability to break up the Clippers small ball that they have faced thus far, by far, just because DeAndre Ayton is actually a really good finisher in the paint and can create his own shot at the basket rather than he can only really catch a lob or get a putback layup like Rudy Gobert. And Boban can hit a hook shot sometimes, but not something you can really rely upon for your offense. So that's an interesting situation for this series just in general, and ultimately that, like, which decision do you make there situation is difficult. Of course, I would lean towards focus more on defending Booker than Ayton, but at the same time, you can't just give them a layup line. So not an easy thing to defend, and I'm not sure what I would actually choose if I was in Tyronn Lue's shoes. Accidentally rhyming. So yeah, that's one of the most interesting things about this series, and this game, the Suns definitely got the better of it because there were times where DeAndre Ayton was feasting as a result. He had the second most points in this game, and then Devin Booker got so many clean pull-up looks. And he also had a lot of pull-up looks that weren't that clean, but they went in anyways. The solution to that a little bit would have to be just players doing a better job of fighting over the screen. Paul George got some minutes on Book, but it wasn't entirely him. A little mix of stuff like that. I think there was actually a decent amount of Terrence Mann on him as well, unless I'm just going senile right now. Terrence Mann himself actually played pretty well. Of course, not 39 points like he did in Game 6 versus the Utah Jazz, but still pretty damn good. Let's talk about the offense for the Clippers. In my preview video, I mentioned you're going to have to get a good game out of both Reggie and Marcus Morris consistently, alongside Paul George being good, which he was once again in this game, although not the most efficient in the world, but he had a solid performance. You're going to have to get both of those guys to have good games, and Reggie Jackson was once again fantastic. Marcus Morris was not. He was 3 for 11. A couple bad mid-range pull-ups as he's one to take. Sometimes he makes them, but usually he doesn't. 0 for 5 from outside. So, yeah, not a great performance from him. I do have to point out Rondo had a really good performance for them off of the bench. He was making plays. He hit a really, really big 3 late. So he deserves credit for that. I believe he's also the one who passed it to Terrence Mann, who hit a really big 3 late. But ultimately, this game came down to the Clippers couldn't really defend the Book Ayton pick and roll because you either had to give up the roll or you had to give up the mid-range shot. And elite defenses that really fight through the screens and things like that, or having a player like Marcus Morris that's just bigger and can both handle Ayton and step up in the pick and roll so he's not playing drop coverage. They don't really have the personnel, or maybe they could also just turn up the effort a little bit, but ultimately I don't think it was just necessarily a poor defensive effort. It was just both of those guys are really good and really big threats, and it's hard to defend both of them at once, to say the least. And as a result, Phoenix wins this game. Do I have to mention how good did Cameron Payne actually play? He played pretty well, so I didn't want to leave him completely unmentioned. Jay Crowder and Bridges hitting their outside shots, and that's been a big factor for them in the playoffs thus far, is that they have good shooting games and bad shooting games, and it really pretty drastically swings whether or not the team actually wins. If you go and look at the games where Jay Crowder shot well from 3, those tend to be the games that the Suns actually win. I know especially it was either game 5 or 6. Jay Crowder hit like 6 or 7 3-pointers, and that was a huge factor in why they won. Cameron Johnson was also playing fantastic off of the bench. But yeah, that was about it. There were some E'Twaun Moore minutes in this one, and we were talking about in the Zoom call with my friends about how that's not ideal. But actually, E'Twaun Moore is not the worst player to be playing. There's definitely worse options out there. But yeah, really well executed game from both teams, I would say. Like I said, Paul George, his efficiency wasn't the best. There were a couple of pull-up mid-range shots that I was like, you really didn't have to take that shot, man. Like, that was just not a good look, and it almost felt like he was playing hero ball when not necessary, which is weird because Paul George sometimes doesn't play hero ball when it is necessary. But just a couple of pull-up shots that I was like, you could have gotten a better look at that. You could have slowed it down a little bit. But ultimately, I'm not going to be too harsh on Paul George in this one. The efficiency was not the best in the world, but overall, he still definitely had a good, productive game. And I imagine with how well he shot from 3 as well as how much he got to the line, his true shooting percentage was not abysmal. 38% from the field is not good, but I think he was fine in this game. Not really bad, not really great, even though he had 34 points. So, yeah, Reggie Jackson was really good, and DeMarcus Cousins played well off the bench. So did Rajon Rondo. After that, really not much contribution there. And then the Suns just really took advantage of what they're good at, which is admirable. And in my preview video for this series, I said that I was ultimately going to the team that I know I can rely upon to be more consistent and just know what I'm going to get in, game out. The Clippers, we get a bad Marcus Morris game, but a great Reggie Jackson game, and we get Rajon Rondo and DeMarcus Cousins off of the bench, which is just them. Rondo has always been in the rotation, Boogie back and forth in that regard, but it's always a wild card with the Clippers. You always don't know exactly what you're getting with this team, especially without Kawhi Leonard. So for that reason, I picked the Suns to win this series, and thus far I'm feeling pretty confident in that prediction. But yeah, that's it. Goodbye.